program. So I want you to go ahead and hit that share link, hit that button because Georgia Allen is here.
Well, hello, 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 Henderson. It is always good to see Thursday.
Yes.
So, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is GA for Justice. I'm your host, Georgia Allen. I bring you greetings and welcome to our noonday show. As always, we want to thank Henderson Vaughn, aka the Dream Maker, aka when I grew up, he was Captain 85.
Yeah.
And he always is willing to open up the airways for the community to be able to have a conversation. And for GA for Justice, we always enjoy having a conversation to provide information, a conversation to provide correction when necessary, and a conversation for transformation. We understand how important it is to get accurate information into our community to make sure that our people are not only receiving the information that they need to have, but they're getting information that they can use and carry it forward. Today, we do have a very, very special guest that's coming to us today. He is the president, the newly elected president of the Virginia Beach Interdenominational Ministers Conference. Now, I'm going to share a little bit more about him shortly, but we always want to make sure that we have a good group of individuals who come on this show because they all provide various information that is in the best interest of our community. Our today's topic is sowing, and that's SOWING, growing or slowing. And, you know, ministers, when they come on, they can take any message and turn it into a whole entire sermon. So I gave him a heads up because of all the things that have been taking place throughout our nation. We want to make sure that we're sowing good seeds. But it's also very important that these seeds are growing, that they're not stagnant. And then because we have so many issues in our community, we want to make sure people understand that we don't have time to be slowing down. As a matter of fact, we need to get more energized and be picking up the pace because whether it's on the local level and we're fighting for our schools, the education system, or whether we're fighting for a school building. In Virginia Beach, we have had a situation where some of our oldest schools in our predominantly Black communities haven't been renovated, refurbished, or torn down and rebuilt. And so many of us go down to city council meeting or go to school board meetings, and we do all these things because we have to sow good seeds in our community. But sowing alone is not going to work. You're going to have to do a little more work. You're going to have to water those seeds that you're sowing so that they can begin to grow. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to have the new president of the Virginia Beach Interdenominational Minister Conference on the show today, because we want him to kind of share with you a little bit about his vision for the community, a little bit about his vision for the Virginia Beach Interdenominational Ministers Conference, or we call it VBIMC. And that will allow people who are listening to be able to connect, because there are perhaps ministers who are in our area who would like to be a part of the ministers conference, but they're not familiar with what is going on with the ministers conference. And I thought by having him on, he can kind of share with the community and, you know, just come on and tell us about what he's doing, what some of the things that they've decided are going to be some of the topics for this term. I think they served for about 2 years. And what is their vision? What's their goal? What's their ideas with regards to what is going on in the city of Virginia Beach? What do they see as some of the biggest needs that are in our city so that we can make sure that those of us who are in other organizations can also work and collaborate with the ministers so that we can have a better impact. It's hard to fight all the battles by yourself. You know, I'm a civil rights activist. Many of you who have listened to my show in the past know that I'm a civil rights activist. So I'm always looking for people to team up with who are interested in bringing about positive changes in our community on behalf of our young people, especially because we need them trained, educated, developed, and ready to take the baton. It's unfair for us to be upset with our young people when we have not done the work that needs to be done so that they are ready to take over when we, you know, transition into other areas. Okay. Our guest is putting on his Bluetooth, so he should be here shortly. I use my computer, and I use my computer because I know if I try to use the phone or technology in any other way other than the computer, since the computer was a thing that I learned on.
Yeah.
Y'all probably would never see me on Thursday, and Henderson would be sitting there going,
Well,
"Are you there?
yeah.
Are you there? Where are you?" So to make life easier for him, I keep it simple. I use the big old clunk clunk machine
Right.
so that I can come on the air and know that I'm probably not going to drop off. I know there's a pretty good chance that I'm not going to drop off.
Right.
So with that being said, I hope that you will enjoy the show today. Again, the topic for today is sewing, SOWING, but we could say SEWING because we need to sew up some of this stuff that's ripped up, torn up, messed up. We probably could use SCW instead of SOW, but we're going to do SOWING, sewing, growing, and we need our community to grow, and we need it to grow in various areas, whether it's education, whether it's economics, whether our political savvy. But we definitely need our community to be growing. And the last thing is sowing, growing, or slowing. And for those of you who are listening, now is not the time. Now is not the time to slow down. And as I shared earlier, if you're going to city council meeting and school board meetings, those folks, they are working 24 hours a day. And when one person is sleeping, they have replacements all over the place ready to go. And so it's so important that our community understand that we don't have the luxury of slowing down. As a matter of fact, it's critically important that we bring some more people on board, that we connect with more people so that if I should slow down, or Carl or Gary or James, and I'm just throwing out some names of people who have been out here fighting, Venus and others, if they need to slow down for a little while, we already have our bench set and ready to go. Yeah. And so that is critically important if we want to not only maintain what we have, but improve upon what we have and grow the things that we have or need in our community. Our guest today is Pastor R. PEREZ Gatling. And again, he is the newly elected president of the Virginia Beach Interdenominational Ministers Conference. Pastor Gatling was born and raised in Como, North Carolina. He is married to Dr. Valika S. Gatling, and they've been married for 24 years. He has one son, Louis, who I believe is I think he's 22 or 23 years old. His parents, Mr. Russell and Mrs. Cleo Gatlin, out of Carolina. Pastor Gatlin attended high school in Murfreesboro High School. He has a Bachelor of Science English education from Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville. He's a graduate, Masters of Arts Educational Leadership from Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. His employment: teacher, 7 years English teacher and coach at Deep Creek High School in Chesapeake. 8 years English teacher, Heritage High School in Newport News, Virginia. School administration, 7 years school administrator and 1 year as a personnel administrator for Virginia Beach City Public Schools. Currently, he's an English teacher at the Open Campus in Norfolk Public School System. Has been a minister of music for 16 years at various churches, or he was. And he also has a few publications, co-author of Teaching Hope with Aaron Gruel and the Freedom Writer Teachers. And you may be familiar with that movie, Freedom Writers. Co-author of an Inexcusable Absence, the Shortage of Black Male Teachers, that was done in 2013 with his wife, Dr. Valika S. Gatlin, and Dr. Leroy Hamilton Jr. His ministry: Pastor Gatlin answered the call to ministry in 2011 and was licensed to preach the gospel by Dr. Melvin O. Mariner. And many of you are familiar with him. He's out in Portsmouth, Virginia, and pastor of Grove Baptist Church. And in October 2011, he was licensed at that time, was ordained by Dr. Mariner in July of 2014. He served as a shepherd of Zion in 2012 church from August of 2014 until April of 2018, when he was called by God and elected by the members of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Virginia Beach, Virginia, to serve as their 14th pastor. And we are very excited to have with us today pastor and president of the Virginia Beach Interdenominational Ministers Conference, Reverend R. Perez Gatlin. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I hope I did you justice.
You did me justice. Thank you. And really, I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody who can say somebody.
All right now. All right now.
That's all I am.
All right. Well, look, I love humble ministers. I grew up in the household of a humble minister. And when my father passed away, I was 4 years old. He passed away 3 years before my 5th birthday. And I tell you, it wasn't a year later that my mom decided she was going to marry another minister. So I went from having a pastor in the house to having another minister in the house. So look.
Mm-hmm. You know about us ministers.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, I kind of share with the audience that we got a topic today. I said it's sowing, growing, and slowing. I said we could have changed it to SEWING because we didn't sew up some of this mess. But we decided we would go with sowing because we're going to plant some seeds today, okay? So we have you up here to share with us. You're the newest president of the Virginia Beach Interdenominational Ministers Conference, and just want to kind of share with the audience some of the things that you have talked about as it pertains to our city of Virginia Beach. Because you've been on the front lines. I've seen you down at city council meetings, so I know you've been there. So kind of share with the audience.
In terms of, and thank you for having me Sister Allen. And hi, is that the Dream Maker?
That is the Dream Maker.
Hey,
Yeah, he got it.
June, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you.
Good. It is an honor to be on the show and to even be asked. The in terms of what we're doing with Virginia Beach and Dr. James Allen, and I have to give him credit. When I became pastor of Ebenezer, when I was called to Ebenezer, he called me. He says we're going to need you for some of the things we're doing. We're going to need your advocacy. We're going to need your voice. We're going to need you. And he says, I says, okay, I'm there, and didn't know what there was. And also Dr. Michael Daniels pulled me into service, and this level of service. And I had seen it and experienced it with my own pastor as well, because I came out, as you mentioned in your introduction, my pastor is Melvin Mariner, Dr. Melvin O. Mariner from Grove Baptist Church. And Grove has been doing amazing work in the community for years. And so once Dr. Allen and Dr. Daniels pulled me into this level of service, we began, I think the first thing we dealt with the city was we were on the African American Roundtable. We were dealing with the police data and the fact that, number one, the police department in Virginia Beach had shoddy data because of an outdated platform. And with the death, with the murder of George Floyd, let's call it what it was. Groups and localities and cities were scrambling, trying to figure out how to connect with the Black community. Now, ostensibly, it was to connect with the Black community to build bridges. But we know it was to build relationships and connect with the Black community to keep their cities from being burned to the ground. And we know what it is, and we see the game for what it is, truly. Through the African American Roundtable that was started by our mayor, we did have a series of what we thought were really powerful meetings, to where the stakeholders were from the faith community, the stakeholders were from the school division, the police department, the human resources department of the city, and then we had stakeholders from Black Lives Matter, and city council and the school board. And when we met, the police department presented its data, and the data they presented, there were some concerns about their data. Number one, they were higher than the national average, and the number of cases filed against the police department that were founded. I think at the time that the data said there were 33% of their cases that were founded. And I think cases filed by police officers against the Virginia Beach Police Department, the number of cases that were founded was higher than the national average. And so we dealt with that. We dealt with trying to change the task force, the police, the CR, the Citizens Review Panel,
right?
And we also dealt with. We also made some attempts to look at the school division data and police data in terms of hiring, and why there's so few African Americans in the higher positions and the top tier positions. And but at the end of the day, what I felt like Mayor Dyer did, especially with the Citizens Review Board and Citizens Review Panel, I felt like when we got to City Council, I know he changed some of our recommendations, did not present some of the recommendations, and then I felt like he played defense when they were presented. And so it was like all the meetings, all the planning was for naught.
Right.
And so we're dealing with that. Now we want to deal with we want to work to deal with the voting system in Virginia Beach, because the 10-1 voting system is under attack now. And, well, of course, you and I were at City Council talking about that and speaking to council about that. That's under attack. And we're standing with the city workers in their quest to unionize. United, we bargain. Divide, beg.
Exactly.
I told that.
Well, I tell you, if we keep telling each other that, maybe we'll understand how important it is that we unite. And being a pastor, I believe in Acts it said, and they came together all on what? One accord.
That to church, I've got it in my notes. Yeah.
And so when I can't say I made that message up. I want to say I read it, but I have a tendency in the middle of the night, stuff will come to me and I'll get up and I'll write it. So I could have written it, but it wasn't because I was so brilliant. It was because while I was sleeping, God was speaking.
It's okay. And get up in the middle of the night during your and record what God gives.
So when I heard when my spirit was like, united we bargain, divided we beg, I said that is such a powerful message, because if you look throughout, it was always in unity. They came together. They, when he sent them out 2 by 2. And I can remember thinking, well, why did God only send them out 2 by 2? And all of a sudden, Spirit said, well, if they're out 2 by 2 and I'm there, there's already 3 right there, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. And it never had occurred to me before, but everything works for a purpose. And, these things that you're sharing today. And I love the fact that you have a strong background in education, because that gives us another tool in the toolbox, because for so long, it just felt like just a few people were trying to help in all the different areas. And we didn't necessarily have a background in that. We just fussed about it. We just brought attention to it, not because we had all this knowledge or anything. And I think a lot of times people think, well, I can't do that because, I'm not an expert over here. And I'm not an expert over there. Well, guess what? I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. I just saw something that was wrong and said something about it, and that's what people have to understand, is that collectively just opening our mouths can make a difference. So I really like the fact that you have that strong background in education, because see, you kind of know how the chain work.
I do.
Yeah. And so hopefully we'll be able to get more people involved in the various groups, the Ministers Conference, the NAACP, Do the Right Thing, Virginia Beach APAC, and the CAT organization, which is the Community Action Team. All of these groups do different things, but they come together to fight a similar battle. And that's important, because now we can get a lot more work done than we have been in the past. But the other thing that I found very interesting is when you said that the police officers were filing, actions against other policemen, because I listened to the retreat that the city of Virginia Beach had recently, and they read off all this wonderful stuff and how much better that the city of Virginia Beach was doing than any other city of its size. But I just heard you say that they found something like 33%. That's 1/3.
30 cases were found,
Were founded.
and that was higher than the national average.
Right.
And so we and of course we many of us learned when we took our first class where we dealt with statistics and probability, that if the narrative is right, you can make numbers say anything. And if the questions are right, you can make data and the numbers say anything. But when you look at these superlatives that the police chief uses, and when you look at the superlatives that the mayor used, and they're based on what they see in one part of the data.
Right.
And best is subjective. It is so subjective. And finest, subjective. And they use all of these subjective terms. And many times they leave the objective data out. And they also look at qualitative data based on a certain population versus quantitative data. And so we hear what they say. And I think it was maybe 2 years ago when Chief Newdigate met with the Virginia Beach NAACP to present the data dealing with traffic stops. And the data showed, and he said it, that they stopped African Americans. The police department stopped African Americans at a higher rate than they stopped citizens of other ethnic groups, from other ethnic groups. And then he tried to explain it away. He says, we're a resort city, and of course we'll have people coming in from all sorts of places, and places all over the state and other cities and so forth. And his explanation didn't make any sense. And I'm saying today what I said to him: if you collect data that says something's wrong, and then you explain it away, you never fix what's wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And he was speaking to a people who knew the difference between the other stuff and Shinola. And he was giving us the other stuff.
Right.
He was tap dancing and giving us, it was just rhetoric. And I said it to him, you know, you can't, if you explain it away, then you never deal with the problem. And I truly believe in talking to people before I talk about them.
Absolutely.
So I'm saying to you and on this show what I said to him then.
Absolutely. That sounds to me like he was cherry picking. That's what it sounds to me like.
He was.
Yeah.
And I look forward to being in a room with him to say to him personally that you know, I need him to be better and do better.
And they all need to be better and do better. I mean, even down to us looking for more people in upper level areas throughout the city, in the police department, in the schools administration building, in the city building, directors. We got deputy directors and things of that nature, but we don't have a lot of directors in the city of Virginia Beach that run the whole entire department.
Yes.
And that makes no sense for a city of this size when they are always bragging about, we are one of the most integrated and diverse cities in the whole entire United States of America. But what difference does it make if you're not diverse in your organizational structure? You may be diverse in your neighborhoods, in your community, but you're not diverse in the structure of the city in the operations of the city of Virginia Beach. And that's a problem.
Right. And many times what they do, if they put us in high positions, they handcuff us. And I'll give you a perfect example. At one point, Cheryl Woodhouse, and she's the former principal of Tallwood High School.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, she was the director of high schools
Mm-hmm.
For Virginia Beach City Public Schools. And during that time, my wife was director of special education and gifted, and they call it they call the department OPEC, the Office of Programs for Exceptional Children, and there were some improprieties in the application process at the Brickell Academy, the gifted school. They don't call it Brickell Academy now. And there were some improprieties there. And my wife pointed it out. She had data. She had notebooks of data to where they were disqualifying applications for kids who looked like us, right. And where they'd see the scores. They wouldn't disqualify the application, but they wouldn't pick the child. Or if the child came, they weeded the child out through horrible treatment,
right,
and exclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wife brought that data, and my wife doesn't operate without data. And the rule in our house is that in God we trust, but everybody else has to bring data.
Right.
And so she took that data to Cheryl Woodhouse. Cheryl Woodhouse, director of secondary schools, was ready to act.
Mm-hmm.
Principal had been, and everybody most people in the division knew that principal was operating like that at the school. And Cheryl, and she's now HR director, was ready to act. But once it got up to John Mira, the former director of HR, it didn't go any farther. Because John is part of that. He was part of that good old boy network in Virginia Beach. That network that said, if you've been a part of my circle for years, then we're going to find a way to make sure that you're not in trouble or nothing happens to you. And it went away.
Right.
Now, Cheryl Woodhouse is one of the most courageous people I know. And know that she didn't stop the paperwork. My wife is not a coward. She didn't stop that paperwork. It stopped at the HR level, the level of the HR director, John Mira. Now Cheryl Woodhouse is the HR director. John has retired. And so Cheryl has, and she has integrity. She has a backbone. She is smart. She is innovative, and now she's not hindered by those other forces that to hinder her from speaking out about things that were wrong. And so when you look at that kind of thing in the school division, sometimes they'll put Black leaders in place, but they will handcuff them.
Right.
Keep them from doing what they need to do. And I think they've done that to our city manager.
Oh yeah. And that is so very true. I can remember years, I want to say all the way back to the 1990s, was when I was, 80s and 90s was when I first started getting involved in actually attending school board meetings and city council meetings and things of that nature. And they had a open forum a couple of times about this gifted program. So I attended some of the meetings, and I ran into this white gentleman. I don't even remember his name or anything. He was an attorney, and he came to me. He said, Georgia, all of my children are in the gifted program. He said only one of the three qualify. He got 3 kids, all of them in the gifted program. Only one of the 3 qualified. So that meant that left out 2 potential Black students who were actually qualified to be in the gifted program.
Yes.
And so Virginia Beach has a record of setting aside when it's us, it's affirmative action. It's set aside. When it's them, it's qualified.
Right.
And this is a problem in our city and cities throughout the nation, because if it wasn't, Jackson, Mississippi would not be in the situation that Jackson, Mississippi is in. It was because they withdrew all of the resources from Jackson, which ultimately put Jackson in the situation they're in. And then the minute one crime is committed, all of a sudden they lose their mind and say, oh, that's just a bad area. No, the people in that area are just as good as anybody else. You suck the resources and revenue out of their community, which put them in a situation of desperation.
Yeah.
And that makes all the difference in the world.
You realize if you don't feed your body will begin to eat itself.
Exactly.
You don't give your body resources. If you suck the resources out of community, you begin to take resources from each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so there's a lot of work to be done in the city of Virginia Beach. And you have been sowing good seeds since before you became president of the Ministers Conference. And we're seeing some better outcomes. And so for me, it's so important, because I'm one of these people. There's 4 generations of me right now. Okay. There's me, my daughter, my granddaughter, and my great granddaughters. Okay. And I want some boys. That's right now. It's like
you need testosterone family, huh?
Now, my father didn't have a problem. He had boys, and all the boys had plenty of boys. But for some reason, I got married young, had 2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl, and my my daughter and her daughter all have girls. Now, my son, he has 1 son and he has 1 grandson, but he got 2 granddaughters.
Are you serious?
So he's still outnumbered.
Background, huh? Well, but you know, I've been blessed to be in seats where, and I didn't know it at the time, but in those seats where trouble sits, and trouble comes, as an assistant principal at Renaissance Academy, the alternative.
Yes.
I saw kids who looked like us who were railroaded. Renaissance Academy. I was there from 2010 until 2014. There was one case where a young Black boy had a maybe a toy gun at the bus stop. And he got in trouble in the community. Had never been in trouble at school.
Right.
And they used what they call a Rule 30. Back then, they used what was called Rule 30 to get you to Renaissance Academy, which means if you had a charge pending in the community, and your principal knew it, your principal could say, your presence in the school presents a threat or a possible disruption to the educational process. And so we need to send you to Renaissance Academy. And so they ruled 30 that young man over to Renaissance Academy, even though he had no discipline in his school.
Right.
Parents fought it. And I think at the time, and the chair of the school board, and I can't call his name, but he made disparaging comments about the young African-American male.
Sounds like Edwards.
Edwards, it was. He was upset because the family fought it, and he actually disclosed some of the young man's personal information and school record publicly via a school board meeting. And so we see what happens with that process. And I can help parents whose sons and daughters have been sent to Renaissance Academy, because I know what the rules are. I know what the rules are. As an assistant principal, I've seen referrals where the teacher has written a child up and written disrespectful. And the rule is teachers don't get to say what the offense is.
Right.
The administrator decides the offense. The teachers present the narrative. Write down what happened and what the child did.
Right.
Gets to the office, we will decide what it is. But I've seen kids, students who've been sent to Renaissance Academy where you have referrals with an offense with no narrative. And that is taboo. And then I've also been blessed. I was blessed to work in HR for a year in employee relations. And people don't like to see the people from employee relations because we are the people who come in when they get in trouble. We did the investigations, and you make recommendations to the HR director. And there are cases in Virginia Beach in which a principal or person is placed at a school, teacher, or sometimes a TA is placed at a school based on in the end of the year numbers. If one school loses a few allocations because their enrollment dropped, and the teacher has or TA has to be transferred because they have a continuing contract, then sometimes that teacher or TA goes to this other school and the principal doesn't want them. And so what the principal does is make it very uncomfortable for that teacher to be there, and they weed them out. And it's going on, and it has gone on. I've sat in hearings where it's going on. And so we've got to make sure those folks know, don't go down quietly.
Right.
Find your advocates. Don't go into that good night. Find your advocates.
Right. So I see as two people, one in civil rights and one in ministry, that there's some tools that we need to have in the toolbox. There are resources that we need to have in the resource box. So, and we need to know who our teachers are. We need to know who our administrators are that looks like us and everything. We need to know our retired teachers, administrators, and all, and people who used to be in the Virginia Beach school system that have now moved to other school systems that perhaps can work in some of these areas. The NAACP has like 20 some committees: education committee, economic committee, political action committee. And if we had some of these people in some of these positions where we began to build out capacity, those people would not be out there by themselves. Again, united we bargain, divided we beg. And so if they're out there by themselves, if it's a me mindset versus a we mindset, that me is going to be in big trouble. And so we're going to have to retrain. And that's why I tell people all the time that right now we should be training up soldiers. And I mean, when I say young soldiers, I got a 60-year-old great granddaughter, and that young lady, I wouldn't want to have to debate her at any point in time. Because she does not back down. She's 60 years old, and boy, she is tough as nails. And I said, boy, I feel sorry for Virginia Beach when she becomes a civil rights activist, because I'm mild compared to what this young lady is probably going to be.
Wow. Wow. Well, in terms of the NAACP, um, uh, if people know,
Mm-hmm.
and if people get to know people,
Mm-hmm.
are retired administrators out there who know the game and who can help, who can keep our students from being railroaded.
Okay.
And a number of them, and we have to tap into them. They can tell you how the parents how to navigate the system. They can actually look at, if the parent will give them the information and disclose the information, they can look at the referrals and say, okay, yeah, I would have sent your kid to Renaissance for this, but here's how you navigate it now that you're there. Once you get there, you tap into the resources. Because one thing that Virginia Beach did that was good, that Norfolk won't do, and I've talked to a couple of school board members, is you have to have an alternative school, period.
Mm-hmm.
If we have determined that all people aren't the same, there are some children who need smaller settings. There's some children who need to be in a more restricted program. And there's some children who need a higher level and greater resources than others.
Right.
And that really is what an alternative school should provide.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller setting,
Mm-hmm.
a myriad of resources,
Mm-hmm.
and resources on a higher level, and then a plan for the student.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'll give Virginia Beach credit for that, and Kay Thomas over at Renaissance Academy. It was when kids came in as an administrator, we had to make sure the kid knew their support system, which started with the principal, then it went to me. They had a guidance counselor, they had a student support specialist, they had their teacher, and then they had other staff members like security assistants
Mm-hmm.
who would support them. Because you'd have a kid, and if a kid comes in and they've had a bad day at home, they're like a Coke can that has been shaken up. They've
Right.
had a bad morning. And sometimes the first person who pops that lid on the Coke can that has been shaken up at home is the person who gets all of the
Right.
right
Hey.
from the Coke can. The person didn't cause it,
Mm-hmm.
but the person gets it.
Right.
When security guards, when the kids come in and the security guards and the administrators are there at check-in, and we've built a relationship with the kids, we know when Jaquan is not his normal self.
Mm-hmm.
And we see it. And you know what went on in the community because you have your kids who'll tell you, hey, this happened in the community, and it may come into the school.
Right.
And so you're watching, you're building relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and and you pull Jaquan and go, Jaquan, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody has to get Jaquan to talk and to talk his feelings out before he gets to that first class or that first person who bumps him in the hallway inadvertently.
Right.
And they get all of that spray from the can. You have to have alternative schools,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to almost over-resource your alternative schools.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to teach the kid to self-monitor, self-advocate,
Mm-hmm.
and then get to the place where they could self-monitor, self-advocate without fussing, and then and to some extent self-motivate.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put them back into the regular school after a while, but you also give them a resource to help them make that connection from the alternative school, from the smaller setting back to the larger setting, somebody to walk Parakletos or alongside them.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you have those folk in Virginia Beach and who've been administrators in Norfolk and Chesapeake who know how to navigate the system, who know what it's like when a child is being railroaded, who know what it looks like when a child needs another setting.
Mhm.
And if the NAACP taps into those people and taps into that expertise, then you've got a mighty, mighty army of people to ensure that our school division stays on the straight and narrow and
Mhm.
does the best it can by all students, especially those students who've always been disenfranchised, so those students who've always been suspended at higher levels and higher rates.
That's very good information, because now that we have technology, we don't have to get our teachers who are retired to come to meetings. We can set up a Zoom meeting on a monthly basis, parent time, monthly basis, youth time, and begin to take advantage of these resources that we have today. We can also get innovative. And since I'm not the greatest innovator, I say talk to the children and let them help us innovate, because I will assure you our young people think way outside of the box that I was in when I was growing up. So I can see amazing things given what you shared with us today. So you sowed some strong, powerful seeds today. I really like what you shared with regards to not only the misinformation that we're receiving from the police department, that we need to do a check. You know, we have a criminal justice committee in the NAACP. So I put a check mark by that we need to address that with the police department. You can't give us misinformation. You can't, leave out information. You're going to have to give us the straight up information, so that if we're going to fix a problem, then we need to have correct information. It doesn't do us any good to try to fix something. I tell people all the time, I cannot stand a liar. You sit here, you lie to me, you want me to go and fight, and then I get there and I got egg all over my face because they got like you said, the data. But in this particular case, they have accurate data. And I'm sitting there looking. Now, I done went all the way down here to fight for you. You've been lying to me.
Yes.
I don't have a leg to stand on.
Yes. Yes.
So that's going to be very, very critical, in terms of us being able to leverage our power, in terms of us being able to wield our power, so that we can make sure that things work in the best interest of the marginalized and the disenfranchised. Love
Yes.
that. Love what you said about the education piece, providing that information, what you said about the police department, hiring practices, and then when I say love it, love having the information. Don't love that this is a mess.
Right.
That with regards to this hiring practice situation is then, handcuffing people. So those are things that we need to be addressing to make sure that when people are put in a position, that they can operate from a position of power. Okay. And so that's critically important. So we have work to do. It just lets you know that we don't have any time to slow down.
You're right. I think I think the thing that has hindered our work is inconsistency.
Right.
And to where we will show up and be reactive, but we need to be consistently proactive.
Absolutely.
What Dr. Coleman and is doing with the Community Police Roundtable. They've been meeting for at least 3 or 4 years, at least, and consistently proactive, so the relationships are built, and so that because they will wait us out on the reactive part.
Absolutely.
wait us out. They'll wait until the noise stops because they know that we have other problems back here, or they'll create other fires back here to keep us from going up to this fire. We know the game.
Absolutely.
Trump did it the whole time in office.
Absolutely.
Caught him on this thing, then he created a fire over here, and would be averted to this fire. But if we are consistent and we consistently proactive, then we won't watch the ship turn fast, but we will watch the ship turn.
Well, I want to thank you again for being willing to come and share today. This will be up on, well, it's actually running right now on YouTube. GA for Just Is, and why it broke up as GA, the number 4, just than an IS. I mean, it totally different than how I did it. But when they put it on YouTube, it breaks out each segment. But you'll be able to see it there on many of the social media platforms. But before you go, I know we only have a couple of minutes left. Do you want to have a final comment before you go that is helpful to the community?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I'm just a nobody. I'm trying to tell everybody about somebody who can save anybody, and the information I have. I just wanted to empower the community, and I want to thank you, Sister Allen, and I want to thank the Dream Maker for having me on. And I think that if we begin to work our networks, it will make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
We have to work our networks when we meet people. And my wife, Valika, is a master at this. When she meets people and they talk, she actually listens and she begins networking in her mind. How can this person help this other person that I know? Or how can this other person help the person I just met? She's a master of it. And if we work our networks, then we'll be able to make those connections with people to ensure that we serve people and we do right by people.
Absolutely.
I tell my people in my church, and I'm going to stop talking after this. For some of you, if you don't tell us what you're going through, then there's no way for us to respond, because what might be 3 or 4 phone calls for you is a person I know personally, and it's just a text message for me. 3 or 4 calls for you where you might or you might not get what you need. I know the person personally. I went to school with them, or they're my cousin, and I can send a text message and you can certainly get what you need.
Right.
We've got to talk. We've got to communicate. We've got to make sure that people know how to work the network. It's called network for a reason.
Absolutely. Well, again, I just want to thank you so much for coming. Again, this is GA for Justice every Thursday at 12 noon to 1 o'clock on the WVDM. You can pick us up on YouTube and many of the social media platforms. We're coming up to the close of the show. Henderson, close us out.
Okay.
See you next week.
All right. Just want to ask you a quick question, Pastor. You from Murfreesboro, North Carolina?
I say Murfreesboro, but I'm from Como.
Yeah.